Hi everyone, Brastany Monk here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a YUNOREVIEW, where I give my thoughts on a bunch of albums that I haven't had the chance to review over about a month or so. I just kind of talk about them gauntlet style in this video. Bam, 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 you know what it is. So let's do it. Here we go. New Cattle Decapitation album, the record, in a word, overproduced. The drums and guitars on this thing are so regimented and groomed that it kind of makes this thing feel less visceral as a result. The instrumentals are like AI-generated tech death, and while I do generally like Cattle Decap's death growls, what they bring to the table on that end, the super melodic kind of goblin style vocals that they work into a lot of tracks, I think they're leaning on a bit too hard with this release. They sound obnoxious. I mean, for sure, this thing is a slight step up from Death Atlas several years ago in terms of speed and intensity, but the band ultimately on this record is kind of spinning their wheels creatively and not really living up to the glory days of some of the output they dropped in the early 2010s. DC The Dawn Funeral, this Wisconsin native, has been turning heads as of late because this record is easily his most versatile yet. Historically, he's been known more as a trap and pop rap artist, clearly taking influence from greats such as Juice WRLD. But now on this new one over here, he's dabbling a bit in synth pop, in breakbeats, in dance pop, in some of that rage stuff too. There are some moments on this thing where he's clearly paying a bit of homage to dudes such as Lil Uzi Vert. And while I think the vocals and the production on this thing are fine, the whole record itself runs kind of like a mild compilation, an okay gathering of DC, touching down on a lot of different sounds and styles. And while, yes, it's kind of cool that he can do everything that he does on this record, he's not doing any of it especially well, and the project just kind of ends up super scatterbrained. So, it's okay. Rapper IDK F65, fresh off of a short and sweet little project he dropped last year with Kaytranada. Now we're getting an ambitious, large solo project here, and I can't say what he's doing on this record is sticking with me, but it is super versatile and kind of keeps me guessing. We have trap bangers on this thing, wild jazz interludes, sensual dance cuts, some Kendrick-esque food for thought, and some surprising features from the likes of Snoop Dogg as well as Saucy Santana. Sort of like that DC The Dawn record I just talked about. It is impressive that IDK can kind of do a little bit of everything that he does on this record, but by that same token, the end result here is sort of unfocused and kind of forgettable. Plus, we have a lot of songs here that are kind of brief and a little underdeveloped too. So, it's okay. Water From Your Eyes was really looking forward to hearing this New York duo's Matador Records debut, and it is an interesting one with this LP. You get a lot of groovy, chaotic bits of loop-heavy noise pop with very, very, very deadpan lead vocals. You have a couple bangers in the mix as well as like a tender moment such as 14, which is really nice. But the record overall is relatively short, and I think there's too much runtime spent diving into sort of obtuse territory, I guess. Like on the song Open, for example, which I think starts off pretty strong, but the more it builds on its very basic musical elements at the start, the more unappealing the track becomes, which again is odd. Typically when tracks such as these develop over the course of a song, I'm drawn further in, but in the case of Water From Your Eyes, it's kind of the opposite. But I will say this is easily their most attention-grabbing album so far, and maybe a stronger record is coming down the pipe. Fans of Superorganism as well as Jockstrap, I think, should take notice of this one. We have a legit classical piano record over here, spearheaded by Mr. Indie Darling himself, Sufjan Stevens. There are a lot of regal, complicated, layered, and pretty piano pieces scattered across this thing. Sometimes so complex that these tracks become a bit of a tangle to listen to. But who can deny a closing track titled, And I Shall Come to You Like a Stormtrooper in Drag, serving imperial realness. Really serving cunt on your classical record, that's for sure. Overall, I think this thing is a cool project. It has its moments. It's an ambitious detour for Stevens. If you listen to it, just know what you're getting into. Given some of the now classic material electronic music producer Subtract came through with in the early 2010s, of course, more than a decade later, I'm excited to hear a new project over here. But man, if the Rat Road isn't the most annoyingly sequenced project in his discography so far. There are loads and loads and loads of interludes on this thing. Core tracks that are so short and underdeveloped, they kind of feel like interludes, even though they're kind of not. And those core songs I was just referring to are really hit or miss depending on the genre direction of the song or the feature. There's no cohesion on this thing. There's no focus. As I said, a lot of tracks are just kind of half-baked. And there's a shortage of bops I could see myself listening to outside of the context of the album as well. The Sampha track, the Toro y Moi cut, that's about it. So yeah, honestly, kind of disappointed in this one. Another mid, bloated, boring Kodak Black album. What else is new? The guy's appeal only lasts so long on a record because he is not that versatile of a rapper, singer, or artist. And while he does have his flash in the pan moments where he drops a catchy flow, or he has a strong melody to something that he's rapping or singing, or, he has an introspective moment, maybe a little topical focus. Yeah, these moments never last all that long and are usually upended by the continuous mediocrity he drops for one track after next on records like this that are just far too long. I do see he is trying to sing a bit more on this record, but he's never really been that strong of a singer, so there's only so far that goes. And yeah, there's really not much else to say about this record. It's mid. And saying that may even be giving it too much credit. I once saw a comment, I think on social media, where someone told me that I'm not really that into electro post-hardcore act Enter Shikari because they're too English, and I can't appreciate what they do because of some inherent anti-English bias. And you know what? I wish that was the problem, because then maybe I wouldn't be listening to an obnoxious onslaught of sloppy genre fusions. You have alt-rock and metal riffs all over this thing, post-hardcore screams, poppy cleans, and trance synths and electronic breakdowns that are so goddamn tacky and make bands like Linkin Park look like fucking geniuses for pulling off the genre balances they did over the course of their career. Because records like this are an example of how wrong all that could have gone. But yeah, no thanks. I'm gonna pass on this. Rage music is obviously one of the most in-demand strains of hip-hop and trap right now, with artists like Playboi Carti as well as Destroy Lonely and Yeat putting up some big numbers with every new release. Now enter the latest addition to the wave, that being JELEEL, a dude whose intense energy and buff physique kind of precedes his music through his viral music videos and live performance clips. You hear how crazy this guy is in his vocal performances, as well as he's shouting with an incredible amount of sustain on a lot of these cuts and yelling so loudly it's kind of making the auto-tune warble a little bit. And in that sense, this is a record that truly lives up to its title. And JELEEL is currently one of the few rage artists that, to me, on the mic and in his demeanor, sounds enraged and kind of positive as well, energized. He comes across way more hype than drugged out and checked out and disconnected. And for me, that's a refreshing change of pace. It's a vibe, it's a sound that not everybody can pull off. Case in point, look at Ty Dolla $ign on the back end of this record trying to, vocalize in the way that JELEEL does on the song he's featured in, and sounding awful doing it. There are a few stylistic switch-ups that JELEEL is able to pull off in the deep cuts on this record, but for the most part, it's a little one-dimensional, and I feel like it may take time for JELEEL to kind of grow into his own and, get better at the songwriting game and his writing game. But for sure, as this record currently stands, he's bringing a lot of passion, some banger beats, some sticky choruses here and there, some strong riffs vocally, and I'm looking forward to seeing where he can take things from here. What a crossover. We have one of electronic music's most celebrated contemporary artists making an album with one of the production, electronic music, and ambient music goats, Brian Eno. No clue how this happened, but I'm pretty sure this thing is a tight and direct series of blissful, serene soundscapes. Exactly the kind of thing you would expect out of an Eno album, but then that is slightly enhanced by the vocal samples and chops and texture play we typically know Fred again for. I wouldn't exactly call this thing a revolutionary collaboration, but it does seem like a sensible combination of their respective styles and vibes and, you know, kind of, I suppose, trademark studio trickery. Their sounds definitely don't clash on this record, and for a collab that is as unforeseen as this one, maybe that's the best thing we could hope for. Blech. Chicago EDM and dubstep producer ILLENIUM, who's been making waves in the electronic music scene since like the mid-2010s. I'm not the biggest fan of his stuff, but sometimes I can get down with like some bro step or some future bass bangers, why not? But blech, that is basically not what this album is at all for the most part. I mean, for sure, you do get some of those massive perks and rising synth passages that you typically get from those thumping festival anthems, but most of the songs on this thing at their core are actually just very bad motivational poster music with boring vocalists, sanitized production, some pop punk guitars as well. I mean, I guess in a way ILLENIUM is showing his versatility on this record, but I don't think producing some of the most soulless and bland pop and rock music of the year shows artistic character. We have here the 6th full-length studio album from this Norwegian singer and songwriter. It's interesting, but a somewhat inconsistent mixed bag as well. There are moments where the tunes here get kind of dark and moody and jazzy, a la Joni Mitchell, and it's okay, it's fine. I just don't feel like Suzanne brings a specific twist to this sound and this style. The spots that really hit on this record for me were the massive and blissful ballads that kind of reach up into the stratosphere with all these layers of vocals. They're just drenched in atmosphere as well, and they are just gorgeous. I guess the issue is tracks like this are kind of few and far between on the record. I don't really care for many of the spoken word passages on the album either. There's just a lot of kind of duds in the track list, and that's really all I can say. Some very blissful and inspiring moments, but duds as well. Singer-songwriter Christian Matheson is back, although he was never really gone to begin with. He is easily one of the most consistently releasing singers and songwriters out of Sweden. Maybe consistent to a fault, because I feel like at this point his sound and his style are both very thoroughly established, and prior attempts he's made to kind of build out the instrumental palettes of his records have not yielded the best results. And Henry Street I don't think offers much in terms of surprises. However, this is one of his more rustic and stripped back albums in a while, and as a result, it is still, at the very least, a beautiful listen, especially given the piano-backed title track. There are some strong songs and good guitar work on this record as well. It's not exactly exciting to me at this point, but indie folk fanatics take notice. Hip-hop hitmaker Armani White comes through with a little EP over here, of course showcasing some of the biggest tracks he's dropped over the past year, be that Goated or Silvertooth, or of course the viral TikTok hit Billie Eilish. And yeah, it's a short EP, focuses mostly on those tracks that he's known the best for. There are a few deep cuts that are fine. Still too early to call it, I would say, but I'm looking forward to when this guy is eventually in album mode, because he's showing at least a decent amount of versatility thus far. And while he doesn't come across as like the deepest or most profound rapper out there today, he knows his way around a chorus, and he doesn't sound all that one-dimensional either. He can approach with a variety of different energy levels and hip-hop subgenres, and kind of get a catchy earworm through to you. So all in all, I would say this is not a bad intro to the guy. This new Mandy, Indiana record is kind of like the soundtrack to the darkest, freakiest warehouse rave of all time. Lots of chaotic and harsh noises, endless grooves, some industrial undertones too, French lyrics. I would say model actress fans take notice. Though I think the record is a little front-loaded at the end of the day. Some of the hardest hitting and most memorable tracks pop out in the first leg, and then after that, as the band goes into more experimental territory, the appeal of these songs really starts to nosedive. I do still think it is a decent debut, and maybe a stronger record is coming down the pipe. I'll say this: it's a good start. Zishin, have you given any of these albums a listen? Did you love them? Did you hate them? What would you rate them? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, music, YUNOREVIEW, forever.